I played in the Negro League.
What a run that was from Allison Felix.
At the end, he always had a little kick left.
Hello and welcome to a special presentation of KTLA 5 Sports as we celebrate Black History Month by honoring athletes. I'm Darren Horton, and over the next half hour, we'll discuss overdue recognition for the Negro Leagues, chat with Dodgers manager Dave Roberts, as well as Olympic gold medalist Allison Felix. But we begin near the turn of the 20th century in a nation still sharply divided from a civil war only 30 years old. It was a time when the most popular sport in America was cycling, and one of its greatest champions was a man named Major Taylor. The fact that 125 years ago, one of the world's greatest cyclists was an American is noteworthy, though the reality that he was also black and faced brutally oppressive obstacles renders this story and his journey extraordinary.
One of his opponents was so incensed to be racing against a black man, he actually, before the start of the race, jumped off his bike, attacked Major Taylor, choked him into unconsciousness before the police could get him.
Marshall Taylor knew from a young age there would be challenges, but his love of the bike would prove far more compelling than trepidatious. He discovered his calling as a teenager, doing odd jobs in a Massachusetts bike shop. He taught himself to do tricks for customers, decked out in an old military uniform, which was how he came to be known as Major. From there, it was natural progression to competitive riding, where athleticism and ambition solidified. In 1895, he turned pro.
Cycling at the time was the biggest sport in the world, hugely more popular than baseball at the time. And so it drew a lot of attention and it paid well.
Major Taylor was a natural in the saddle, so much so he competed in all disciplines: sprints, road courses, grueling six-day events, and of course, track racing.
He had this ability to ride for miles and miles and hours at top speed and then have enough left to get on top of that and sprint off.
At the end, he always had a little kick left to pull him down at the finish line. And so the distances for him were half mile, the mile, and the 2-mile track. Those are sprint. Those were the ones he was the strongest at and had the most success. So he ended up over the years focusing his racing career in those areas of track riding.
With the turn of the 20th century, Taylor's name became synonymous with cycling. He showcased his talent not only in the United States, but around the world, touring with his wife and young daughter while taking on all races and challengers. His ability, records, and popularity made him a small fortune, while his generosity and good nature endeared him to admirers. Being a religious man, he wouldn't race on Sundays, didn't smoke or drink, though what he couldn't control would prove far more punishing to his dignity.
If you can fast forward 100 or plus years to what Tiger Woods went through in golf in modern times, roll the clock back and imagine what it was like for Marshall Major Taylor when he came along in the late 1800s. He was ostracized. He was forbidden to cycling organizations that supported riders. He was turned down by potential sponsors. Yeah, it was difficult, but through all of that, he did two things. He didn't quit, and he didn't let them know they got to him.
It's not hard now to view Taylor's perseverance as a metaphor for life's never-ending struggle, chiseled through strength of spirit, physicality, and a natural desire to keep moving forward. 100 years later, Marty Blunt and Virgil Ford honor this legacy as leaders of the Major Taylor Cycling Club of Los Angeles, one of many organizations across the country bearing his name.
The joy of and the benefits of cycling. Just by being out there and showing ourselves. There's also an element of us that want to get involved in the community and doing things to help the homeless and just to put the name out there and put us out in the forefront to be an example to others that you can live a healthy lifestyle.
As much as I would have liked to have known Major Taylor, I wouldn't have appreciated him then like I appreciate him now. And I wouldn't be involved in the things to keep his legacy alive and expand the sport he loved if I hadn't been born when I was born. And part of that is being around other people who know and appreciate who Major Taylor was, and I'll say is because he still lives in what we do.
Because he remained a modest man, Taylor would likely have been surprised by the reverential following he continues to inspire. In retirement, despite his career success, he suffered through the Depression like millions of others. In 1932, having been separated from his wife and daughter for years, Taylor died alone in Chicago and was buried in an unmarked grave. Several years later, a group of former racers, along with bike company executive Frank Schwinn, paid to have his body exhumed and properly reburied. A simple plaque marking the site reads in part, "A credit to his race who always gave out his best. Gone, but not forgotten." Taylor also left his mark on cycling technology, championing the use of a handlebar stem, which allowed riders to get lower in the saddle while stretching into a more aerodynamic position. Up next, Dave Roberts talks with us about the baseball pioneer who continues to motivate him when our special presentation of Honoring Athletes continues.
Miller still waiting for his first pitch. Roberts is going. Posada's throw. Roberts safe.
Dave Roberts was known as an offensive catalyst over his 10 MLB seasons, one who had no intention of leaving the game once his playing days were over. As our Rashawn Haylock reports, he had higher aspirations, including the fulfillment of a vision laid out years before by one of the game's iconic figures.
I'm extremely proud and pleased to be here this afternoon, but must admit I'm going to be tremendously more pleased and more proud when I look at that third base coaching line one day and see a black face managing in baseball. Thank you very much.
48 years ago, in his final public appearance, and just 9 days before his passing, Jackie Robinson made that statement. Since then, there have been 488 managerial vacancies in Major League Baseball, but just 27 of those have been filled by black men.
It's certainly discouraging. I know that wasn't Jackie's vision or hope.
Dave Roberts and Robinson share a bond unique to the world of Major League Baseball. They represent the first black manager and ball player in Dodger history. Both also played collegiately at UCLA. Not surprisingly, Robinson became a case study for Roberts on the struggles of black men in baseball.
My dad was the first black kid in his high school. And so obviously different levels, but their kind of plights, their fights were mirrored one another. So I think that's something that he really wanted me to understand. You know, there were times that he had to fight. There were times that he had to kind of walk away, being an outcast, being an outsider, as Jackie was.
The job description for a head coach or manager has changed since Roberts' 10 years as a major league player. Today's game has evolved to something beyond strategy or even analytics.
New video tonight of the moments leading up to the police shooting of Jacob Blake.
No bigger issue than right now what's going on. This is a human being issue, and we all need to be treated the same way. And a black man being shot 7 times in the back, we need to be better. That just can't happen.
I think no matter what, I wasn't going to play tonight, just because I have to just stand by my guns here.
I think that the best leaders, coaches, managers embrace it. Players are much more in tune with social issues, and you've got to kind of coach them up differently and kind of connect with them differently. It's actually more rewarding than coaching guys to be better baseball players.
That goes strike 3. Dodgers have won it all in 2020.
For Roberts, the manager, reaching baseball's ultimate prize included not just courses in social injustices, but also navigating through a pandemic and surviving in a bubble. He became only the second African-American manager to win a World Series. an accomplishment the Dodgers skipper is still adjusting to.
It's slowly seeping in. I personally, I will self-admit it, I don't do a good job of kind of appreciating some of the accomplishments that I'm a part of, or recognition that I might get. But when I do take a step back and look at the gravity of this, it's overwhelming. And I guess for me, I'm just more hopeful that Black men get an opportunity to lead organizations.
Hope remains an ongoing beacon as men like Roberts and future generations continue to validate the vision of Jackie Robinson.
The biggest myth is that Black managers, Black coaches can't manage upward, can't kind of coexist in a white America. The man who can get the most out of his players, and get them to buy in, and that's the most important thing. And so, color certainly shouldn't be a factor in that determination. You want to be diverse. You've got to make it a point to execute that. And I think that the powers that be, it just hasn't been as much of a priority as it should be.
Roberts and the Blue Jays' Cito Gaston, the only two Black managers to lead their teams to World Series titles. Up next, the Negro Leagues are granted worthy and long-belated acceptance when honoring athletes continues.
I played in the Negro Leagues. Tell you what, the Negro Leagues was nothing like Hollywood tried to make it. The Negro League was the third largest black business in this country. Yeah.
Hard to find a more deserving member of the Hall of Fame than Buck O'Neil, a great Negro League star and passionate ambassador. For years, he was one of many who lobbied for a full and meaningful acceptance of Negro League players. Now it seems baseball is finally listening. For over a century, many have stubbornly clung to a fable, one that deems the Negro Leagues inferior and comprising players not up to the standards of Major League Baseball. That myth is finally about to change.
For Gibson family, for the other great Negro League baseball players, they were already major leaguers in our eyes.
Rube Foster created the Negro Leagues in 1920, and now, after 100 years of demanding a rightful legacy, Major League Baseball will reclassify them as a major league, opening its official record books to include Negro League statistics. Satchel Paige, Cool Papa Bell, and Josh Gibson are among the 3,000-plus players whose careers will now receive deserving recognition.
Before, some people said, well, he's the greatest Negro League baseball player. I mean, you have, maybe Babe Ruth is the greatest Major League Baseball player. It's always that black and white issue, Negro Leagues, Major Leagues. So now it's more or less like, okay, well, when we officially see Josh's name next to those stats, he can be considered one of the greatest baseball players ever.
And while MLB's plans have been mostly greeted with optimism, there remains a simmering issue of trust, one that has festered for decades.
We need to be cautious because in our zeal to be excited about it, we don't want to give up all this hard work that we've made to make the Negro Leagues legitimate in the eyes of America.
For a huge and underrepresented segment of the American story, the Negro Leagues represented freedom and the opportunity to showcase black excellence.
To have a black team in their community gave them an extra sense of pride. It was just a parallel league of equal talent.
It was, in fact, a fusion of superior athletes and businessmen creating their own elite brand of the game, one that was both entertaining and innovative and ignored by the white baseball world.
They call it tricky baseball today, or small ball. It was commonplace in the Negro Leagues. And so this style of play encouraged fans to pay attention because you may see something that you've never seen before.
You're talking about speed, you're talking about athletic, you're talking about greatness. If they had played in the major, it definitely would have changed the game. It would have changed the game speed-wise, showmanship.
We got night baseball, jersey numbers, batting helmets. All of this originated in the Negro Leagues. So they continue to be creative, just like a jazz musician would be, and trying to bring fans to the ballpark.
The Negro Leagues were unique because they had to be. And considering the way those games were historically recorded, translating their achievements into baseball's official record will be challenging.
It's going to be really impossible to get an absolute complete statistical record because, again, the Negro Leagues were covered primarily by Black weekly newspapers. There aren't a lot of surviving scorebooks or scorecards to chronicle every single game.
You can juggle it around and reshape the history, but some things you cannot ignore, like no-hitters, opening day, feats. We had ball players who hit 4 home runs in one ball game. We had ball players who hit for the cycle. We got to add those individual games to the total record. You cannot ignore those anymore.
Giving Negro Leaguers their proper place in baseball's rich history will prove for some to be too little, too late.
Many of these fellows died without a skill set outside of baseball. I mean, Coop Papa Bell ended up being a security guard at the City Hall. Some ball players are buried in unmarked graves because they died in poverty because of the lack of skills. There's only 4 ball players living today who played before 1948. It's disturbing that they didn't get a chance to reap the benefits of their talents.
The racism and segregation is kind of the shameful part of this story. In essence, there should not have ever been a Negro Leagues in the first place if America was fair and just.
Baseball will never be able to wash away the sobering stains of its bigoted and intolerant past, but there is hope that this gesture could provide some closure.
It's never too late to do the right thing, but actually how you handle doing the right thing is probably going to be more important.
The Negro Leagues have been stealth, they've been invisible, they've been in the twilight zone for too long. Their history has been swept under the rug and forgotten, and 2021 is going to be a new year, a new day, and a new chance to discover the greatness of Black baseball.
Recently, the Negro Leagues lost another significant alum, slugger Hank Aaron, who played for the Indianapolis Clowns in the early 50s before moving on to the Milwaukee Braves. Over 23 MLB seasons, Hammer and Hank became one of the greatest players the game ever produced. He is just one of the many losses the sports world witnessed over the past year, notable competitors forever engraved in our memories.
Five-time world champion, Kobe Bryant.
Special names who will be missed. Up next, the woman who delivers power and grace every time she touches a track, Allison Felix, when honoring athletes continues. Allison Felix has been leaving opponents in her wake for years, though she does occasionally slow down enough to let the rest of us catch up and marvel at her talent. Once again, here's Rashawn Haylock.
To think, one of the greatest athletes of all time never imagined sports being a part of her future.
I think my first Olympic Games that I really remember watching, as a child, 96, and seeing Dominique Dawes, and I wasn't an athlete, whatsoever, but I was fascinated by her. She captivated me because she was young, she looked like me, and she just inspired me to do something. I didn't know what that something would be, but I knew that, that I wanted to be like her.
But Felix and the track were a perfect match. She started running as a 9th grader at Los Angeles Baptist High School in the San Fernando Valley, turning pro from there. A year later, as an 18-year-old in Athens, Greece, Felix took silver in the 200 at her first Olympic Games, adding her own name to an exclusive list of groundbreaking African-American female track athletes. I'm going to throw a couple names out there at you, and then you just give me the first thing that kind of comes to mind. Wilma Rudolph.
Man, paved the way, legendary.
Florence Griffith Joyner.
So much style, speed, records.
Evelyn Ashford.
Ooh, she was, I love them all, but she was one of my favorite as well. Just determination and longevity.
Allison Felix.
Hopefully has done some damage in my own time and done some work for women as well.
In terms of Wilma Rudolph, Evelyn Ashford, what impact did they have on you?
If it hadn't been for them, I wouldn't have had the opportunities that I've had myself. So just, so grateful for everything that they have done. They are history, and we just want to keep moving it forward.
She's the most decorated woman in the sport, winning a record 6 Olympic golds. Her world championship tally of 13 gold medals and 18 overall are the most of anyone, male or female. The last coming just 10 months after giving birth. Even with all that hardware, her grit and tenacity are equally impressive. In 2016, she fought through torn ligaments just to make the Olympic team, only to eventually settle for silver in the 400 because of a controversial dive.
Something I've learned over the years is just there's so much to be learned from losses, and even when you feel like you could have been done wrong or the situation doesn't seem fair.
Her athletic success has also offered her a platform beyond the track. In recent years, she's added her name to a campaign of awareness for issues of social justice and maternal health in African American women. She also took the bold step of taking on Nike, her former sponsor, for what she called mistreatment of pregnant track athletes.
It took me a while to find my voice because I'm more naturally quiet, but I think once the issues are big enough, it really makes it, at least for myself, where I couldn't sit back any longer. Just that power in your voice, whether it's to change something, whether it's to let somebody know that they're not alone in their own fight. I was just blown away by that because, for so long I felt like I had to just run fast. And so now kind of seeing my eyes open to that impact is something new.
Her heart and desire to serve could be in the DNA, as she is the daughter of a pastor and an educator, both of whom helped mold Felix into what she is today, a proud teacher and guide for young women.
I never would have imagined, to get anywhere near to where I am today. And I really look at it as, I want to open the door for the next person. I want to extend a hand and help them through their journey. And so, it's a privilege, but I know that there's going to be many more after me.
Allison Felix, an elegant and inspirational champion. We hope you've enjoyed our presentation of honoring athletes, part of our celebration of Black History Month. I'm Darren Horton. Thanks for watching.